Over the course of NBA history, we have seen our fair share of teams that have performed exceptionally well in the regular season appear to be title contenders going into the postseason, all but to bomb when it matters most in the playoffs, or as some like to call it, pretenders. Teams that give off the perception of being contenders because of their dominance in the regular season, but teams that most of us deep down didn't really see them making a run at the Larry O'Brien. Teams like the 2023 Milwaukee Bucks or the 2021 Philadelphia 76ers come to mind in recent history. Teams that finished with the best record in the East, one getting bounced in the first round, the other getting beaten by an inexperienced Hawks team in the second round. How about the Donovan Mitchell, Rudy Gobert Jazz teams that always showed up well in the regular season but would fail time and time again in the playoffs? And look, it happens because at the end of the day, only one team can be crowned the champion. It's not easy to win a championship no matter how great or successful your team was in the regular season. Everything has to fall in place for a team to be successful, to win a title, from matchups, injuries, or even just having an uncharacteristically bad shooting night. However, when looking at some of these teams of the past that fell short of expectations in the postseason, I don't think there has ever been quite the team that has fallen into that category of being pretenders as much as this year's Cleveland Cavaliers, a team that got absolutely worked by a team that had no business beating them in the Eastern Conference semis. A year where some predicted the Cavs would finally break out and make a run at their first title since the lone championship from LeBron James in 2016. How did it get to this point, and where did the Cavs go from here? Let's talk about it. Now, if you remember, the Cavs kicked off their season with one of the best starts in franchise history, going 15-0 and turning heads with their insanely fast-paced, very efficient offense when even some of the best defenses in the league could not keep up with them. But even then, a lot of people were still saying, including myself, yeah, but is this team for real? Like, are they really going to beat a team like the Celtics or the Knicks in a 7-game series? And most people said no. Yeah, that's cute and all what they were doing, but what matters is how they finished this season. But lo and behold, the Cavs continued to defy the doubters, not only maintaining their number one seed in the Eastern Conference for the entire season, and their number one rated offense maintaining that as well, but their defense even started picking up a bit towards the back half of the year. Donovan Mitchell was balling and playing like a superstar. Evan Mobley was stepping up big time as an elite defender and would obviously go on to win Defensive Player of the Year. Darius Garland bounced back a bit after having somewhat of an underwhelming season last year, where he shot much better and was much more in control and commanding the offense. Like, everything was falling into place for this team, and a lot of that credit goes to their newly hired head coach and Kenny Atkinson, who would go on to win Coach of the Year. He found a way for this team to work well together and get the most out of each player's skill sets. Like, the talent was there, we all knew that, but it wasn't leading to sustained success that the Cavs needed to see, especially after going all in on Donovan Mitchell and trading a good chunk of their future to get him. And so the Cavs would go on to finish the season 64-18, their best record since 2009 in the early LeBron James years. And for a while, the Cavs were on pace actually to win 70 games before they took their foot off the gas a bit towards the end of the season to prepare for the playoffs. They make great work of the Miami Heat, dismantling that team in 4 games, leaving no doubt, especially in Game 4, that they were the better team. And it definitely seemed like the Cavs were not messing around. They were poised to make it out of the Eastern Conference. But then they ran into the Indiana Pacers, which, no disrespect to the Pacers because they are a hell of a team. They exposed every flaw and weakness of the Cavs and picked them apart. Rick Carlisle out-coached Kenny Atkinson to the fullest. They did everything right in this series. But let's be real, this Cavs team, with their talent, should not have lost to the Pacers in the manner that they did. Like, it's one thing if this series had gone 7 games and every game was a battle where it could have gone either way, but to get gentlemen swept, losing 5 games, blowing big leads in the fourth quarter, getting outscored by over 40 points in the first half in Game 4, looking non-competitive and completely giving up midway through the second quarter, blowing another big first half lead in an elimination game in Game 5. Nah, that's inexcusable. After having such a great season, to have it all crumble like that against the 4 seed is peak pretender status. The true sign of a great team is how well they do under pressure, how well they do in responding to adversity. And for the Cavs, they got too complacent with how successful they were in the regular season and sweeping the Heat like they were playing a varsity versus a JV team. They thought they had this thing in the bag, and when the Pacers came out and punched them in the mouth in Game 1, surprising them and taking away home court advantage, they didn't know how to respond. And that shock, that surprise, was compounded in the way they fell apart in those final minutes and the final seconds of Game 2, where the Cavs had a 7-point lead with less than a minute to go and ended up losing the game. Yes, the Cavs came back in Game 3 and whooped the Pacers on their own home court, but those final seconds in Game 2, that's what defined this series. The Cavs weren't recovering from that. Yeah, the Game 3 win was nice, but honestly, it was more of a product of the Pacers having a horrible shooting night and not being as aggressive on the defensive end. And to me, what really did it for the Cavs in blowing this series was just how much their defense fell apart. Their offense was bad as well, which I'll get to, especially for the #1 rated offensive team in the league this season, but they were also a top 10 defensive team in the NBA and had the Defensive Player of the Year on their roster. Their defense in the series against the Pacers was atrocious, especially when we all know that defenses kick up a notch in the playoffs. They went from being top 10 in the league in defensive rating this year to being bottom 10 going into the series. For a team that had one of the best interior defenses in the league this past season, you have Miles Turner and Pascal Siakam getting whatever they wanted. Like, I look at Game 4 specifically, where the Pacers probably would have beat the Cavs by 50 plus had they not sat their starters for most of the second half, but Tyrese Haliburton didn't even have that great of a game, where the Pacers got the bulk of their offense from Miles Turner and Siakam, who were out hustling Jarrett Allen and Evan Mobley, both in the paint, but in getting also out to the perimeter to knock down a 3 in their face. Siakam was 9 for 10 in that game. Turner was 7 for 13. How does that happen against one of the best defensive front courts in the NBA? And then when it comes to the Cavs offense, I mean, they literally have one of the best offensive ratings in league history this season. Top 5 in shooting efficiency from the paint and behind the arc, top 10 in pace, but one of the lowest turnover rates despite their high pace of play, top 10 in league in assists, but when it came to the playoffs, that all just fell apart. And look, I was kind of expecting that to be the case if the Cavs got matched up with a very good defensive team. Like, I thought the Magic would give the Cavs a lot of problems if they saw them in the first round. Didn't think the Magic would beat them, but they would make it hard for the Cavs and their offense to be as efficient as we saw in the regular season. But against the Pacers, an average defensive team, the Pacers made great strides in their overall defense compared to what they were last year, but they were still 13th in the league on defense this past season. And they were the better defensive team in this series, holding the Cavs to just 40% from the field compared to 50% on the season. The Cavs were one of the best three-point shooting teams in the league this year at over 38%. They were 29% in the series. Darius Garland was horrendous in this series, and Game 5 was especially bad for him, shooting 4 for 16 and 0 for 6 from 3 with 5 turnovers, 11 points on 16 shots. You can't have that in the playoffs from one of your best players. And let's not absolve Donovan Mitchell of any blame, who was not great in the final 2 games when it mattered most. Yeah, he had 35 points in Game 5 and was doing what he could to try to carry this team to victory, running on fumes, but he got most of his points at the foul line and was primarily running isolation plays for himself. 35 points on 8 for 25 shooting and 4 for 13 from 3, didn't hit a single 3 until the fourth quarter. That's your backcourt for the future. They have got to be better. Now look, of course, I would be remiss not to mention injuries to the Cavs, especially with all those guys being out in Game 2, which was a must-win game. No Garland, no Mobley, or DeAndre Hunter, and that obviously hurt them, but it still doesn't excuse the manner in which they lost this series, especially when those guys were available for the rest of the games, particularly Garland and Mobley. But what makes things worse for the Cavs is their path forward from here on out. Because while I wouldn't consider their future to be bleak by any means, say compared to teams like the Suns and the Sixers, the Cavs core of Mitchell, Garland, Mobley, and Jarrett Allen are all still relatively young, all in their 30. But with all of their contract extensions they gave out to them this past offseason and the long-term money on their books for this roster, they are committed to this core. They have to make this group work. They have $217 million guaranteed on their books for next season as of right now. That's projected to be above the second apron. The following season, it's even more, at $230 million. They got Darius Garland under contract through 2028. They gave Donovan Mitchell a max extension through 2028. Jarrett Allen's extension goes through 29. And Evan Mobley, that 5-year rookie extension, max extension that they gave him, is on the books until 2030. And because the Cavs will be over the second apron for the foreseeable future, that's really going to limit their ability to make moves on the margins to improve their overall depth and talent on the roster, because they can't aggregate salaries in a trade, they can't take more money in than what they send out, their mid-level exception is lower because they're a tax-paying team, they can't sign players on the buyout market. There are just such few avenues to make improvements to your roster when you're over the second apron. And the Cavs, based on what we witnessed from this team yet again in the playoffs, as currently constructed, they're not real contenders. And they need more than what we're currently looking at to be able to get them there. I'll be curious to see if the Cavs do in fact decide to pivot and trade off one of their larger contracts to take on an expiring deal for some cap relief. I doubt it happens because all signs indicate they are 100% committed to this core, but in my view, it's the only way out to get out of salary cap hell for the Cavaliers. Just my take on the matter. I would love to hear what you guys think though. As always, be sure to subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.